Macron and Zelenskyy signed declaration on strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities. US prepares sanctions on countries doing business with Russia, and how Russia could attack a NATO state within 2 to 4 years with Baltic's likely targets. The latest news next. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and French President Emmanuel Macron signed a historic agreement on long-term cooperation between the two countries, according to the Office of the President of Ukraine and Le Figaro. The President of Ukraine and his French counterpart signed a letter of intent, the content of which is still unknown, but which Zelenskyy previously called historic. The document was signed at a table set up on the runway of the Villa Koblai air base against the backdrop of aircraft and air defense systems. In particular, Ukraine will order 100 Rafale fighter jets from France. Earlier, Reuters reported that Zelenskyy plans to sign an agreement with France today, November 17th, on the supply of air defense systems, military aircraft and missiles. Negotiations have been ongoing for several weeks regarding France's providing more military support to Ukraine. Last month, Macron promised to offer more Mirage fighter jets, initially promising to supply 6, as well as a new batch of Aster 30 surface-to-air missiles manufactured by the European group MBDA for SAM-T air defense batteries. Earlier, Zelenskyy said that Ukraine would soon receive new air defense systems and combat aircraft from its allies, including France. The relevant decisions are already being prepared, and it will be a historic agreement. In addition, at the end of October, Zelenskyy said that Ukraine could soon receive additional Mirage 2000 aircraft from France. The decision has already been made. Previously, on October 24th, after a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, French President Emmanuel Macron said that France would provide Ukraine with additional Mirage fighter jets and Aster ammunition for SAM-T air defense systems, a message of gratitude to France. France's support is not just assistance, it is a lifeline, a reminder that courage still has allies and that freedom is never defended alone. In moments when darkness tries to dictate the future, France stands as a nation that chooses principle over comfort, responsibility over silence. Your solidarity carries more than weapons or aircraft. It carries faith. Faith that Ukrainian struggle matters, that democracy is worth protecting, that aggression has consequences, and that Europe is strongest when it stands together. We feel your support not as something distant or diplomatic, but as something deeply human. It is the assurance that we are not abandoned, that our fight is understood, and that our hope is shared. France has shown leadership when it counted, determination when others hesitated, and heart, a genuine, powerful heart that Ukraine will never forget. US President Donald Trump says that Republicans are working on imposing sanctions against countries that have trade relations with Russia, Reuters reports. The announced sanctions will apply to any country that trades with Russia. The US Republican Party is currently working on a corresponding bill.
As you know, I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned.
The US president did not provide details about the bill, but hinted at which countries could be among the first to face sanctions. They may add Iran to that, Donald Trump says. About US sanctions bill, in April, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, and over 80 other lawmakers submitted a bill to Congress to impose 500% tariffs on imports into the US of goods from countries that buy Russian oil, petroleum products, natural gas, or uranium. The bill is intended to weaken Russia's economy and persuade Russia's Vladimir Putin to negotiate an end to the war against Ukraine. However, on October 21st, the US Senate postponed consideration of the bill. The reason was the planned summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in Budapest. Senate Majority Leader John Thune promised at the time that he would decide on bringing the bill to a vote after the Trump-Putin summit in Budapest. Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin could order an attack on a NATO state within the next 2 to 4 years, and the Baltic states may be one of Russia's most likely targets, reported by European Commissioner for Defense Andrius Kubilius at a conference in Vilnius. Putin could attack one of the Baltic states within 2 to 4 years, the commissioner warned.
One of the most important questions for the European Union and for NATO is how to defend the Baltics and how to learn from Ukraine. The urgency of the first question comes from the public statements of our intelligence services, including from Germany, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, and from our region, that Putin can be ready to test Article 5 during the next 2 or 4 years before 2030.
Kubilius added that in such a case, the Baltic states could become one of the preferable targets of the new Kremlin aggression.
It will be an aggression also against all of NATO and against all of the European Union. I would like to recall that the recent famous book, If Russia Wins, a Scenario by Carlo Massala, the well-known German analyst, who is also a professor at Bundeswehr University, presents a threatening scenario when NATO fails to agree on how to react when Narva is occupied. I don't want to elaborate on Carlo Massala's scenario, but defending the Baltics means being ready for different scenarios.
Kubilius mentioned that the Treaty on the European Union contains the well-known Article 42 on mutual assistance in the event of armed aggression against one member state, which some experts consider a stronger one than NATO Article 5 in terms of the obligations of member states to help each other. Russian drones invading Poland in September were armed with explosives, General reveals. On the night of September 9th to 10th, when Russian drones violated Polish airspace, the situation was more serious than previously thought because some of the drones were loaded with explosives, according to Lieutenant General Maciej Klisz. Russian drones invading Poland in September were armed with explosives, General reveals. According to him, some Russian drones, including those launched as decoys to overload air defense systems, contained explosive charges. Klisz emphasizes that the claim that these devices were made of cardboard or paper does not fully correspond to reality. He also adds that in September, the threat from Russian drones to Poland was very real. Earlier, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said that the drones that flew into the country on September 10th were technically capable of carrying ammunition, but at that time, they were unloaded. On the night of September 10th, about 20 Russian drones entered Polish airspace. Air defense forces shot down 4 drones, while the rest crashed or were found in 11 settlements, including one on the territory of a military base. According to Polish media reports, some of the unknown drones may have been directed at a NATO base in Poland. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte called the alliance's actions were successful, emphasizing its readiness to defend every inch of territory, including airspace. It's Russia. Russia sent those drones. Russia violated Polish airspace. Russia loaded those drones with explosives. Russia deliberately pushed the NATO countries' borders to test, provoke, and intimidate. And that is what makes this so infuriating. This isn't some vague, unidentified threat. It is a blatant Russian intrusion, a calculated move that could have triggered a far larger crisis. The fact that Russian drones, armed and strategically deployed, crossed into Poland, a NATO member, is not an accident, not a misunderstanding, but a reckless, aggressive act by the Russian state. It's frightening and enraging at the same time. Russia keeps showing that it's willing to gamble with the safety of millions just to flex and destabilize. And seeing those drones crash across Polish towns near military base, knowing they came from Russia, it hits different. It feels like a direct slap in the face to European security. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Support Ukraine, like and subscribe.